Hi everyone, I am Sophia again. Welcome back from lunch and welcome to our presentation on domestic violence and child welfare. For this presentation, we are going to have a little creative activity, so I will give everyone about 30 seconds or so just to gather a paper, pens, with mine. And we'll be introducing that activity later in the presentation. I got you. Perfect. Okay, so here's the team that was involved in the domestic violence and child welfare research. You'll be hearing from many of them momentarily. So in a time where traditional systems and structures are being re-examined, strategies and efforts towards reducing involvement in foster care have become more urgent than ever. Here's a video that will provide some background on our work.
Exposure to domestic violence remains an open question. How did we get here, and what options are available for safe and family-centered reform? To help answer this question, the UCLA Pritzker Center brought together advocates across child welfare and domestic violence to better understand the challenges and needs. We have brought these ideas together in a new report, and some of its key insights can help us understand the issues and work together. Many survivors of domestic violence face significant financial, language, safety, and other social barriers that prevent them from leaving. And it's not just access to resources. It takes an incredible amount of persistence to leave and start a new life with your children. This is especially felt among mothers. Survivors of domestic violence can face allegations of failure to protect under California law. Exposure to violence is undoubtedly harmful for children. However, the tragic irony of failure to protect
Way forward.
difficult for families to reunify. The needs of the family do not always align with the services available, and healing from domestic violence can take longer than the law currently allows. At each stage of a family's journey, new ideas can inform how to safely prevent removal and promote reunification. Education and training for everyone involved can make a significant impact, especially because domestic violence is so stigmatized and often misunderstood. Specialized courts and social workers within a child welfare agency can assist with the unique and complex dynamics of domestic violence child welfare cases. Some jurisdictions are already exploring this. Legislative reform and policy change create long-term impact. With significant opportunities and widespread support for change right now, it's important that we consider the holistic picture of safely supporting families. Together, we can help strengthen children and families. Learn more about our research and programs at pritzkercenter.ucla.edu.
Sorry, what is that? Sorry.
LA County is home.
Thank you, Sophia, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura, and I will now briefly describe the work we did on the intersection between child welfare system and domestic violence. This work was supported by Van Nuys Charities and the Blue Shield of California Foundation. You can find our report in the Pritzker Center website. The contents of our report includes a discussion on the intersections between domestic violence and child welfare system involvement, a review of relevant literature on current efforts that relate domestic violence and the child welfare system, and also it mentions some approaches to domestic violence where child welfare is concerned in other jurisdictions around the United States, and prescribes recommendations. So the report, our methodology of the report is based on research we conducted in 2020 Before the pandemic, we made some site visits to LA-based shelters and domestic violence organizations. Then when we all moved all our work online, we did 19 listening sessions. These were a mix of interviews and focus group discussions. And lastly, we also did a survey that was filled by 122 prisons on the intersection between domestic violence and the child welfare system from their perspectives and experiences. Outside of the formal research process for the report, we also received community feedback on our report. The findings from this data collection resulted in 9 recommendations, grouped in 3 recommendation categories. The first recommendation category, training, includes recommendations on improved training for professionals involved in the child welfare system to better understand the complexities of domestic violence and the cycle of power and control, as well as additional guidance for mandated reporters. The second recommendation category, which is specialization and has like the little icon with the star, includes having a domestic violence specialist working in child welfare agencies, considerations on a specialized domestic violence dependency court track as it is used in Nebraska, a more nuanced, targeted, and culturally competent services for families, the reevaluation of shelter entry requirements, and support existing and create new intervention programs that engage men, fathers, and the paternal family. The third and last recommendation category, which is reform from within the existing child welfare system and the legislative structure, includes recommendations on including parent and child survivors of domestic violence as an eligible candidate population for the Family First Prevention Services Act funding. Also, submit domestic violence focused intervention programs and services to the Family First Prevention Services Act clearinghouse for review and approval, and consider a statutory change which takes into account additional factors when faced with an allegation of domestic violence as contributing to parental deficiency. In conclusion, we believe there are several opportunities for state actors of the child welfare system and service providers to meet the needs of children and families who experience domestic violence. And we describe some of these opportunities in our recommendations in our report. Thank you. I will now pass it to Brittany and Joseph.
All right, hi again. My name is Brittany. And after the report that Laura mentioned, members of the Pritzker Center team wanted to conduct additional research and publication. This research focused specifically on how professionals in the foster care system balance the harm of intimate partner violence as compared to the harm of child removal. The team members, which included Lotta, Taylor Thaxton, Cecilia Bobbitt, Nicole Yee, Mariam Khan, and Todd Franke, worked hard to have the work published in the International Journal of Child Maltreatment, the UC Community Health Conference, and the International Society for Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect Conference.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph. And the failure to protect law states that even in isolation, violence occurring in the home is considered child neglect. Witnessing and experiencing intimate partner violence has profound health impacts on adult survivors and their children who witness violence. Domestic violence was also established as an adverse childhood experience, also known as an ACE. And this is significant because ACEs are linked to chronic overactivation of the hormonal stress response system, significant morbidity and mortality risk over the life course, and ACEs can also overwhelm a child's capacity for self-regulation and disrupt their developing sense of security.
So data that was gathered in 2016 and 2019 showed that 10 to 18% of child abuse and neglect included allegations of intimate partner violence. So in 2020, the Pritzker team took 42 participants that consisted of social workers, attorneys, nonprofit leaders, and licensed therapists, and categorized them into 3 groups for focus group discussions. So those 3 groups being the first, child-focused social workers and lawyers, the second being attorneys that represent parents, and then the third, which is leadership, attorneys, and social workers at domestic violence shelters or IPV nonprofits.
This was the first qualitative study to, in the context of intimate partner violence, investigate the role that professional orientation plays in assessing the harm of foster care placement. And a couple of guiding questions led this research. The team sought to answer how participants from different professional backgrounds, which Brittany just mentioned, view the impact of the child welfare system on survivors and their children who witness IPV. The team also wanted to learn about the participants' perceptions of alternative options to child removal.
So after those focus group discussions, the team categorized the findings into 4 results. The first being IPV can be an entry point into the child welfare system. So child-focused social workers and lawyers, which was group 1, noted that most dependency cases involve IPV. They acknowledged that IPV survivor fear of being reported to child welfare systems or officials can cause them to forego essential services. If survivors remain with the perpetrator, they risk child removal. So the second being the impact of child welfare system involvement. So professionals from all 3 groups stated that the child welfare system involvement may complicate parent survivors' lives without providing a clear benefit. This is perceived to be particularly salient when parent survivor and their family would likely benefit from the supportive services that address the root causes of IPV rather than the imposition of non-tailored mandatory interventions. And the third is acknowledging the shortfalls of the system. So there was consensus among the 3 groups that harm is caused when the child welfare investigations are conducted by those who don't have expertise in the field of intimate partner violence and or have to make rapid decisions due to a heavy caseload. Participants believe that investigations conducted by social workers and ECFS employees without expertise may fail to account for cultural differences between investigator and the family. And the fourth is recommendations for change. Participants from all groups agreed that change to the child welfare system was needed to improve outcomes for families. Some highlighted better training and collaboration with IPV experts, while others wanted to focus more on individualized responses to IPV that address specific needs of the family. And then something that was agreed upon was to center the needs of the parent survivor, and that comes with legislative and system changes. Okay. So that was kind of a summary of our previous work, and now for our creative activity. So if you guys could grab those pens and papers we talked about earlier. Okay, so we are doing this creative activity because much of our world and research centers to the left side of our brain, which is responsible for thinking logically, planning, and organization. Thus, we want to recognize that there are other forms of self-expression and engagement. So as we're here to talk about child welfare and domestic violence, I would like everyone to take 2 minutes and jot down images, sensations, feelings that these topics bring up for you. So we'll take some time to do that. All right, take a couple of seconds to wrap up, and then I'll take any volunteers if you would like to share, if you feel comfortable doing so, either in the chat or out loud in person as well. Yeah.
So this is my drawing, and I have people being separated. So there's like this split here, and then questions about money, getting help, housing, separation from pets, and the amount of time that it will take to improve and try to come back together. And just again, the separation, people are crying and they're cut off from one another.
Yeah, I had similar sentiments in mind. In my head, I like to go I always like a very clear visual pathway. If something happens, 1, 2, 3. But I think with a lot of the work we're doing and a lot of DV survivors, it's very okay, something happens and then now what? It's confusion and the time. Anyone else would like to share? No, it's okay. I can. Oh, Demonte?
Yeah, I put an image of a face, silhouette of a face, and then what's coming out of their mouth, closer to their mouth, is sort of systemic barriers and issues that sort of impede them from being able to produce, love or beneficial behaviors. And then at the end of it is trauma, maladaptive behaviors, families being torn apart, hate versus love, the things that we see and where it's stemming from. So for me, it's in my head, if we can address some of the things, the core issues, we can be able to kind of provide supports to mitigate the subsequent sort of taking and separating families.
I'll go real quickly. So similar to what others have put, I put a divide between you get homes that are kind of damaged, and then families are torn apart. Hearts get broken because of anger that then emanates, and women are the target, so symbolic. And this is how families can, if things can feel like they're going up in smoke, right? Which leads to lots of sadness. And so the range of emotions from anger to sadness to uncertainty to insecurity to doubt to fear to anger, all the different emotions.
I like how you split fam and then ILY. ILY being short for I love you. And so splitting that up.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
That is subconscious.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
good. How about put an FAM? What's that stand? Right.
Awesome. So thank you everyone for sharing. I'll hand it off to America now for the next.
Thank you, Brittany. I hope everyone enjoyed the creative activity and this new way of expressing ideas. I will be introducing our current project, Collaborative Reform in Child Welfare for Families Experiencing DV in the Antelope Valley, that has come to fruition because of all of our previously mentioned studies. This project established a collaboration between the LA County DCFS Lancaster Regional Office and Valley Oasis, a DV service agency in the Antelope Valley, to more effectively serve families referred to DCFS for experiencing DV and families using VO services and involved with DCFS, while actively identifying and changing policies, procedures, and practices that perpetuate systemic racism and racial disproportionality and disparities. So, why the Antelope Valley? Partnerships in the AV happened because of DCFS requests for us to work in the AV after an analysis indicated this area is where DV/child welfare intersect the most. Valley Oasis expressed interest in partnering, and our partnership is off to a very productive start. I will now pass it back to Brittany.
So we are continuing the partnership in the Antelope Valley as we were with the Avenue project. And so we're going to have an information session for this project. The info session will include families and staff from Valley Oasis and staff and students from the Pritzker Center as well. The purpose of this meeting is to familiarize the families and staff at Valley Oasis with our staff, and then to discuss the plan for data collection. This will include conversation about what the focus groups are and how they can get involved if they wish. We also want to introduce ourselves and give them a chance to meet us prior to the focus groups. So for our data collection, we hope to gather data about DV services in the Antelope Valley, including the match between families' needs and DV services with attention to race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, immigration status, age, and among other demographic things. Focus group will be held for DCFS staff, Valley Oasis staff, and for parents. We will use this data and time to help inform how DCFS and Valley Oasis want to collaborate and potentially to advocate for additional services in the Antelope Valley. And furthermore, with the info session, we will be utilizing the same creative activity that we did earlier. And yeah, it's part of our data collection as well. And everyone at the info session will receive an info sheet regarding our research project. So this is the cross-system training is building on our previous work and other research in the area and putting it into action. And so the cross-system training will include: one, Valley Oasis staff will train DCFS staff on basic and advanced domestic violence dynamics. The second being DCFS and Children's Law Center staff will provide training to Valley Oasis staff on the child welfare system. And then I'll go pass it to Joseph.
Thank you, Brittany. For our current project, DCFS Lancaster and Valley Oasis staff will develop a structured role for the VODV advocate within the DCFS Lancaster office. The role will be developed based on a collaborative review of domestic violence screening and assessment practices currently used by DCFS and enhancements needed as determined by DCFS, Valley Oasis, and the Pritzker Center. Domestic violence consultation will be available informally and formally. Drawing on the research literature, multidisciplinary case consultation and review practices will be developed in collaboration with DCFS Lancaster, Valley Oasis, and the Pritzker Center with the following characteristics: regularly scheduled meetings and consultations to address the complex needs of families experiencing DV, attunement to the unique dynamics and needs of families in which DV and child maltreatment co-occur, and attending to the nuances required in working with people whose identities intersect in ways that the child welfare and domestic violence service systems historically neglected. I'll now invite Sophia.
Okay, I will be talking about our research methods that we will be using for the study. So we're evaluating collaboration using a mixed methods design, including the pre-collaboration focus groups mentioned earlier and surveys to measure change in knowledge following the DV and child welfare trainings. Here I'll be focusing on the administrative data review. To assess overall changes in practice with families experiencing DV and refer to DCFS at the Lancaster office, DCFS administrative data will be gathered pre-collaboration and also 5 to 6 months into the collaboration. The data will be drawn from the child abuse and neglect hotline referrals and also DCFS Lancaster office case records. The data points include mandated versus community reporters, a category of mandated reporters, demographic information about the identified child or children and families, and the person alleged to have caused harm or neglect. Also, if DV was named in the hotline report or identified later during the investigation and case dispositions. As always, our aim is to introduce research supported by evidence from the field. So we really hope that this work enables policy change. An example of a needed systems change is modification of the continued use of failure to protect, which we talked about earlier, because this ideology further exerts power and control over victims of domestic violence. I'll now pass it to America.
Thank you, Sophia. Building from the administrative data on mandated reporters referring families to DCFS Lancaster and the work around shifting mandated reporting to family supporting, the series is also supported by the original DV work done by the Pritzker Center previously mentioned, We are planning a 3-part series focused on DV and child welfare kicking off in July. The focus will be on mandated reporting and engaging professionals from these fields to challenge and explore new strategies for supporting families. We will be sure to share the flyer with everyone once it's ready. Back to you, Sophia.
Okay, so we are getting close to the end of this presentation, so I'm going to take us through a few conclusions and key takeaways. First of all, thank you to the team for a great presentation. We would like to highlight that the first DV project was really the foundation for our current work in DV, and the recommendations from that report are structuring our goals for the focus groups that we will be conducting in this current project. So taking a look at our concluding notes. Firstly, DV and child welfare are intricately linked and require an active and systemic response. This includes examples in policy change, such as a review of the language we use to describe clients and situations of DV. Second is the importance of recognizing that balancing harms of child removal versus witnessing DV is very difficult. To elaborate on that, it really brings up the question about whether it would harm the child more to remove them from a place that is familiar to completely unfamiliar versus the challenge of deciding whether having them risk witnessing DV and deciding what would be more harmful to the child and what would be the safest decision for them. This tension is real and a part of what both DCFS and DV services staff manage on a daily basis. Third is an emphasis on DV trained child welfare staff and this collaboration between child welfare and DV services. Again, we really want to emphasize collaboration because all parts of this team are necessary for the best outcomes for the child and the family. Lastly is the need to change the role of mandated reporting to community supporting. This shift would mean that clinicians and case managers will have more room to offer support and collaborate with families to build strength rather than admit them to a system of surveillance that may not result in the greater safety for the child. Thank you very much. Okay, and I'll open the floor to any questions that anybody has. Thank you.
We have a couple minutes for questions, so if you are online, feel free to add a question in the chat, and if you are here in person, feel free to offer your question. I guess I'll pose a question. Given the work we've heard about in the Antelope Valley, I'm curious about your experiences so far with this kind of engagement, because it's slightly different than the work that Brittany and Mia described earlier with Avenue. And the work here is research focused and moving toward policy and practice change. So I'm just wondering what your experience of our partners in the Antelope Valley has been so far.
I guess I could share a little bit. So I've actually gone to the Antelope Valley with Brittany a couple of times, and it was a really great experience. And I'm also so grateful to be able to observe this collaboration that we have formed between DCFS Lancaster and Valley Oasis. It's really encouraging to see how well they're cooperating and the ideas that they're coming up with and the ways that they're working together to improve the services that they offer. So it really is encouraging to see the work that's going on.
Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, and building on what Joseph just said, it has been very gratifying, at least for me, the fact that both DCFS Lancaster and Valley Oasis have been like grateful towards the other. Like they are also making a partnership and like collaboration between them, and they're like satisfied with the work of like bringing everything together and like everyone on the same table. So that's been super. Yeah, it's also like a part of like the connection of like theory to practice. It's like building a bridge. So that's exciting.
Thank you. That takes our time for this session. So we will have a 5-minute break and then return to learn more about our work through the TIES program, which Audra had mentioned earlier. Thank you.